An artificial organ is a human-made organ device or tissue that is implanted or integrated into a human, interfacing with living tissues. To replace a natural organ, to duplicate or augment a specific function or functions so the patient may return to normal life as soon as possible. The replaced function does not have to be related to life support, but it often is. For example, replacement bones and joints, such as those hip replacement, could be also considered an artificial organ.
The first artificial heart to be patented was invented by Paul Winchell in 1963. Winchell later assigned the patent to the University of Utah, where Robert Harvick used it as a model to develop the Harvick 7. Harvick's design improved the design, but his patient died after a few short tests. The first patient to have the Harvick 7 inserted was 61 years old, the dentist Barney Clark, who survived 112 days after the implantation at the University of Utah on December 2, 1982.
It started in 1885 when Mr. Bonfey and Mr. Gruber used and built the first artificial hair lung for organ perfusion studies. Their device released on a thin film of blood and included heating and cooling chambers, manometers, and slapping outlets, monitoring the temperature, pressure, and blood gases during the perfusion. The reason to construct or install an artificial organ may include life support to prevent imminent death while awaiting a transplant, for example, an artificial heart, improve the patient's ability for self-care, for example, an artificial limb, improve the patient's ability for interact socially, for example, an artificial cochlear, cosmetic restorations after a cancer surgery. The main goal is to develop and define technologies that will maintain, improve, or even restore the function of a diseased organ.
Artificial organs are tissue transplant. It is a way to restore the function of an organ by replacing the damaged organ with a new one. Just as these are living organisms with a final objective of synthetic biology, which are manufactured for humans using 3D printers, and the area that addresses this kind of goals is called tissue engineering. Despite the growth of donors and transplants, great efforts are still needed to try to avoid the long waiting list and sometimes the fatal consequence of the long-awaited organ never arrived. For this, one of the objectives is to obtain the artificial organs for transplantation, which would greatly alleviate the situation of the large part of patients.
organ is a grouping of cells that are organized in such a way that they form nerve and muscle tissue. The cells of the body know what to do and when to do it because they are in the right place and have the genetic material. Based on this, structures similar to the organ are created using 3D printers. The other method consists of negative molds of biocompatible materials where the patient cells are introduced to take on the structure and shape of the organ. This method works for simple organs, which are those that don't have a complex structure of blood vessels and where cartilage predominates. The construction of a tissue begins by taking a small sample of tissue from the patient and just to grow cells outside the body. The three-dimensional structure is created using the patient cells. The material chosen in the beginning, which is a mold, disappears and the cells that were plus genetic new tissue, thus creating the new organ. More complex organs, such as the heart, require a more elaborate method in which they take the organ from a donor and remove all its cells using a detergent in a process called deceleration, in which it leaves only the complex structure of tissue called the extracellular matrix, where the patient cells will be injected, allowing them to grow and adapt into the new organ. Obviously, this practice of creating organs does require a lot of study, dealing advance and engineering. This field ends. The creation of artificial organ can solve problems like organ trafficking, and people die in the wait for an organ.
Artificial organs can be classed into 4 different groups. The first one, bones and joints replacement, for example, finger, knee, hip. The second one, skin and soft tissue replacement, for example, skin, muscle. The third one, internal organs, for example, heart, pancreas, blood vessels. And the fourth one, sensory organs, for example, eye, ear.
According to the materials used, artificial organs can be divided in 3 main classes. 1. Mechanical, made of inanimate polymers, that is to say, plastics and or metals. 2. Biomechanical, made of partially living cells and inanimate polymers and or metals. And 3. Biological, that is to say, bioartificial, made of living cells.
Tension takes some of your cells and grows them in culture for 5 to 7 weeks around a biodegradable scaffold. When the organ is ready, it can be transplanted without the need to suppress the patient's immune system, because the organ was grown from the patient's own cells. It carries no risk of rejection.
Pros. 1. Artificial organs can replace diseased or damaged organs, thereby providing the ailing patient with an opportunity to lead a healthy and normal life. 2. Can meet the huge demand of healthy donor organs. 3. A major stumbling block in the form of organ rejection can be solved due to artificial organs. 4. With the help of regenerative medicine or artificial organs therapy, born victims can even have a new skin. Cons. 1. A major concern is the possible presence of the disease in the base tissue, which is used to create the organ. 2. The cost is very high, which means that not everyone can have access. 3. If there is a problem with the functioning of the organ, you might need to go for another transplant. And 4. A person with artificial organ has to take pills for a life. Implied by definition is that the device must not be continuously tethered to a stationary power supply or other stationary resources such as filter or chemical processing units. Periodic rapid recharging of batteries, refilling of chemicals and or cleaning, and the replacing of filter would exclude a device from being called an artificial organ.
The average cost of an artificial organ is $20,000, and about 2% of Americans have an artificial organ or joint. This new technology makes for a global market estimated to be worth around $415 billion in 2016. Cost of healthcare is on the rise, with the USA spending $8,500 annually per person. The number of patients requiring artificial organs far exceeds the amount that has actually received treatment each year, with the project numbers increasingly becoming worse. Cost effectiveness is controversial when also taking into consideration mobility and quality of life. The Cordovan enterprise developed a system for testing drugs in a tissue model based on human cells. Among its products are 3D bioprinters that use biological material to replicate organs and biological tissue, and an automated microfluidic system called O-Live. The latter allows, based on patient sample integration of tissues suitable for testing different drugs, and thus determine the most appropriate treatment for each organism. With its system, when generating a model of a pathology with human cells and even a specific patient, the use of animals for experimentation is ruled out on the one hand, and on the other hand, it allows working with much more representative results. These diagnostic techniques are still in the research stage. In the future, 3D bioprinting is aimed at the manufacturers of organs. In this way, a donor will not be necessary. Its development will be carried out with cells from the same patient who needed it, and the probability of implant rejection will decrease. These technologies have advanced too much in recent decades. Each time we are closer to reaching the future of artificial organs, where they will have millionaire profits, since the supply of this is very little and very expensive, and their demand is high throughout the world, and if it's possible to mass produce with a more standard price or that medical insurance can cover it, in my opinion, they will be a success. And if it is Democrats who support all these technologies win the 2020 elections in the United States, these technologies will be afloat very soon.
I think that this project is so important for the people and is so great because it can change the life of many of people and the family of the people illness.
In my opinion, artificial organs are a good option, especially for young people or for people who still have a lot to live and suffer from some pathology.
I think this kind of new technology needs more development and research, although it may have faults, but it could save a plenty of lives or even be the beginning of a new era of technology.
Obviously, this practice of creating organs still require a lot of study, dealing advance and engineering these fields ends. The creation of artificial organ can solve problems like organ trafficking and people die in the wait for an organ.